Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Clear here with a knife video for you. Today we're taking a look at the Steel Will Barghest. It's a Varangi design, and if you look on Steel Will's website, I'm sure other places you can find this information, Blade HQ or whatever, they have a few. The one that stands out to me is the Plague Doctor. It's also from the same designer, design collaboration with Steel Will. This one, out of, I think there's one or two more, frankly, none of them appeal to me all that much. However, this one kind of does. Steel Will, by the way, did send me this, and I'm really glad they did. I think, maybe they've just seen enough of my videos and we've worked with each other often enough that they kind of go, we know Kevin likes the big stuff. Let's send him something giant and crazy like this. By the way, there is a smaller version of this. So this one is 9.5 inches. There's one that is like 8.5 inches or something. So still not a small knife. It's a 3.5 inch blade rather than a 4 inch blade like this has. By the way, I've already given you some of the numbers now. So 9.5 inches, 4 inch blade, 5.5 inches on the handle, right? That's the closed length. This guy weighs in at 8.1 ounces. So it's a hefty knife. Although, I mean, for the size and for the thickness of it, it kind of makes sense. They have milled it out. Let's see. Try to show you that again when we get to the handle construction. But it has been milled out to save a little bit of weight. So it probably would have been 9 ounces or something if they hadn't done that. What numbers have I not given you yet? Oh yeah, 4 3/8 grip area. So lots and lots of room here. Even if you have much bigger hands than I do, you're not going to have problems with this. And in terms of how this carries, oh, also I think I mentioned, but it's almost 5/8 of an inch thick. So this is a big, thick, heavy knife. Certainly something you notice in your pocket. If you follow me on Instagram, you know I spend quite a bit of time outside. Part of that is just I have a dog who needs to be walked, and I don't know about you, but I way prefer to walk him out in the bush than on the sidewalk. So what I do is, probably 5 out of 7 days, like 3 or 4 minutes from my house, there's a trailhead, and I take the dog out there. He can run through the forest. I can have an enjoyable walk rather than a boring walk down the sidewalk. And so it's a win-win for everybody. And I've taken this with me a few times over the last month and a half or so, or however long I've had this, probably closer to 2 months now. Anyway, I've taken this out with me quite a few times, and it's not bad, right? You're not going to carry it in a pair of dress pants, or if you wear, linen pants every day. I don't know what is going on with your lifestyle, but this knife is not going to work, okay? If you wear 511s or a pair of jeans or, typical khakis or something, I don't find it all that bad. It's heavy, but it's not terrible. So that's size, weight, and carry. Let's get to the things that I like about this blade. There's actually quite a bit that I like, and I will say I had my doubts at first, but after using this and spending some time with it, it's kind of changed my mind. I went from being like, hey, this is kind of a big, cool, beefy knife to, hey, there's something here. This has got some pretty good stuff going on. Beginning with this blade. So D2 blade steel, and D2 steel is a good steel, guys. I have no complaints about it. I wish it was more corrosion resistant, and I kind of get bored of it, and that's not fair. The knife nerd side of me would like to see more variation, but there are tons and tons of D2 frame lock or D2 liner lock knives out there, and this sort of adds another one to the list. However, a couple things that I appreciate. First is the coating here is nice to see on a D2 blade. It's available in satin, and I like the looks of the satin better. However, there is some value in having a coated blade when you're dealing with D2 since it's not quite stainless. The other thing, and the real important point about this, we've got a high flat grind with a swedge here and this black wash finish, fairly thick blade stock, around 1/8 of an inch, actually a little bit more than that. But what's crazy is this is pretty darn thin behind the edge and actually cuts fairly well. So I hadn't had this too long when I was doing some, I think I was actually cutting up some potatoes. And for those of you who are always expecting me to talk about cutting apples, I did cut some apples with this as well. But in this case, it was potatoes. And I was thinking to myself, like, this cuts way better than I expected it to. So that kind of got me going, let's try carrots, let's try apples, let's try a few different things. And I have to say that for a big, thick, heavy duty knife, in fact, not for a big, just for any knife that's got any kind of blade on it, this cuts really, really well. So steel will, you deserve some credit because you got the balance really, really right. And that's one of the things, I like the Benchmade Adamas, but I just found it so thick behind the edge. It just was too much of a sharpened pry bar. Again, I like the 0200, and a number of ZTs have had this problem, but they're just too thick behind the edge, where this, well, it is a substantial, confidence-inspiring blade. It cuts, okay? And that seems like something I shouldn't have to say, but I do, because so many knives of this genre just don't do a great job. And this really, really does. Cold steel tends to do a pretty good job most of the time. Even some of their knives can get a little thick from time to time, but this does a really nice job. It's thin behind the edge. It's a fairly gentle grind here in terms of the slope. And so because of that, this performs very, very nicely, and I'm quite happy with the blade on this. All right, let's move over to the action, because guess what? I did make this comment in my first impressions. This knife is on washers. Okay, phosphor bronze washers. It's got a flipper tab, it's got thumb studs, and it's a liner lock, and it is great. The detent is nice and snappy. It flies out. It's very, very smooth. All right, it doesn't really drop shut. Okay, now I've got the pivot, tightened to the weight to where I like it. If you could tolerate just a little bit of side-to-side play, it will drop shut. And the other thing I will say, right out of box, I noticed the action was quite good on this, and I thought, if it's already this good, what's going to happen if I open this up, put a little KPL in there, and play with it? And so I've done that, and it really has gotten even better. So I really, really like the action on this knife. And usually, when you're getting sort of this heavy duty, tactical style knife, you're not expecting fantastic action, especially when it's phosphor bronze and not not bearings, and also, or not ball bearings, and also when it's not super expensive, right? Phosphor bronze washers are my preference when they're done right, and these are really, really done well. So the action is absolutely enjoyable. Lock bar is easy to access. There's a bit of jimping on there, so you never feel like I can't get a hold of it. The thumb studs are accessible. The flipper tab is comfortable. There's just nothing about the action to complain about whatsoever. So let's move on to the handle. There is one complaint I have about the handle, and it's an ergonomic point. And this is purely my own personal preference, okay? This is really, I'm being unfair, and I'll admit that right out the front, but I don't like knives that have a ridge on the back. So the thumb ramp is back here. I want to be able to put my thumb on the back of the blade, and I can do it, and you can see it's okay. So that's really a minor thing, but it's a little complaint that I do have. I wish the thumb ramp wasn't there. I would have been happier with just a straight spine. Okay, maybe then it would have been too similar to other stuff that Steel Wheel has going on. But outside of that one little issue, the handle is very good. It's nicely textured G10. We've got this extra milling here of lines, and then it's nicely chamfered all the way around. And so in hand, it feels really, really good. By the way, ergonomics, it's easy to make a knife comfortable by making it thick, and that's certainly what they've done here. So this knife feels really, really good in hand because it's so big and bulky and hand-filling. It just feels phenomenal. All right. Construction wise, they've done a backspacer here. It is milled out to save a little bit of weight, although it doesn't save much. All right. So I'm happy with all of that. No hot spots anywhere. Everything about the handle, with the exception, I don't know. I kind of go back and forth about these lines. Would I maybe prefer plain G10? Possibly. The other thing I want to point out here is we have a deep carry clip with flush screws. Thank you. Now, this this is good, but at this point it should be expected. Okay, honestly, this is one of those things where there's no reason not to use flush screws. Just use them. Well, if it's a deep carry clip. If it's not deep carry, then it doesn't matter. But you can't use screws that aren't flush fitting if you're going with a deep carry clip. It just can't be done. So happy to see that they did that right. We've got a fairly substantial lanyard hole here. It works well of course, in sort of a saber grip with your thumb here. It's okay. I tend to like my finger up here and to put my hand on the back of the blade. Now, I will say I appreciate that they left a nice flat spot as sort of a landing pad for my thumb. All right, in a hammer grip, it feels good. In reverse grip, again, very, very comfortable. I feel like I have to do that in every video because every reviewer does it, but I've never held the knife that way for any practical purpose. So, handle, yeah, I like the handle just fine. Let's talk a little bit about the value. That's an important point to bring up here because this is a little expensive. It's not expensive, in the knife world, but $77 for G10 and D2 liner lock, that's a little, there are a lot of $50 knives out there that are essentially the same components. Now, does this do a little bit better job? Yeah, there are some things that stand out. The action on this is really nice. It's definitely a larger knife, so there's more material involved. I get that. So perhaps that justifies the extra cost. All right, but it is a little on the more expensive side at $77. Now, you can save yourself a bit of money if you go to White Mountain Knives. You could save 10% off with my discount code Sharp Stuff if you go to Southern Edge Knife Works. I don't think Southern Edge has these in stock, although they do carry some steel wheel stuff, so I wouldn't put it past, like, it may be that they do. You could save yourself 15% there with the same discount code. Comparisons. Now, this is going to be a little tougher. A lot of, there's not a lot that's like this for the price point. The Rat 1 is a big-ish knife that would be sort of similar. It's not going to be as big. It's not as hand-filling. It's not sort of as overbuilt as this one's not super overbuilt, but this is not going to be quite in the same category. If you want something big and beefy and crazy, the Rat Model 1 doesn't quite get there. What else have we got? I don't have much in terms of budget stuff. The Recon 1 certainly puts me in mind of this, and this is going to be where it falls down a little. So I think a Recon 1 you can get your hands on for about $100. And it's going to be just as tough, just as big. The design still has that tactical-ish feel to it. So this is going to be pretty stiff competition. Most people who, if you called me and said, hey, I'm looking at these two knives, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to say spend the extra $20 or $25 and go to the Recon 1. All right. However, the action is something to consider. If you like to fidget with your knives, the Recon 1 is not really what I'd call a fidgety knife. And if you like something, if you're looking for a Benchmade Adamas or 0200, replacement, then this is going to be more it. 8010, not similar at all in price point, but just, a large G10 liner lock folder. What else have we got? Well, we're thinking of large, sort of scary looking tactical knives. We can throw in the Yojumbo here. Again, I don't have anything that's in quite the same price point. And let's throw in a Para 2 since everyone's kind of familiar with the Para 2. Not that these are comparable at all, but so that you can get an idea of just how big this knife really is. It's a biggin. Okay, so what are my overall thoughts on this knife? Well, other than the value being a little off, this is a really, really good knife. I like a lot of things about it. It feels great in hand. The pocket clip works great. The one thing that really stands out to me is the action is phenomenal. Way better than you would anticipate on a knife that's $70 with phosphor bronze washers. That's impressive. And the other thing that's impressive is the cutting power here. The blade is really, really well done. And I don't know, maybe I'm just biased or jaded. I'm so used to seeing mediocre cutting performance on sort of heavy duty knives that I'm almost become forgiving about it. But this really, kind of challenges that notion. So maybe I'm going to have to be a little more critical about edge geometry and cutting power on some of these larger knives, because this really does a good job. So those are my thoughts, guys. This knife again is not going to be for everybody, but if you like the design, if you want to save a little bit of money over, say, a Recon One or something like that, and if you can find it, at one of those chosen retailers, Southern Edge or White Mountain Knives, and save yourself that extra 10%, that does sweeten the deal just a little bit. So there you go, guys. Those are my thoughts on the Steel Will Barghest. Nice knife. I think they've done a good job. I've enjoyed this one an awful lot, and I think some of you will as well. As I said, maybe not all of you, but I think others will enjoy this too. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll talk to you soon.